Welcome back from the holidays, everybody. Happy New Year's. Over the past few weeks, I have been doing my best to stay unplugged, try not to work, and just spend some quality time with my family and friends. Now, that didn't stop content from coming out from Moore's Law is Dead. Me and the other members of the Moore's Law is Dead team pre-recorded a series of podcasts and videos to trickle out over the holiday season so that, well, the people, especially the patrons, paying us to do this work kept getting the content they were paying for even over the holidays. Now, besides that, though, there was one bit of leaks that I just couldn't help myself but work on a little bit. And that's because sources kept getting me information about the RTX 4070 Ti. You see, I think it was, about a week ago, I put out a tweet that said that anyone hoping for a good outcome for 4070 Ti pricing needs to throw that away immediately. You see, I think we can all agree, ideally, if things were even remotely comparable to previous generations, the 4070 Ti should have been priced between $500 to $700. You see, about a week ago, I had AIBs getting me some of their planned pricing documents that showed pricing around $900, but all of them insisted this wasn't final. This was just what Nvidia was considering going with, and they still technically did not know what Nvidia would say the 4070 Ti pricing would start at. Now, of course, later I tweeted out what I eventually was able to confirm, that Nvidia was going to announce at CES, and they just did, of course, that the 4070 Ti starts at $799. Now, that tweet that confirmed the $799 starting price, that tweet also said that a lot of the models, though, will not be close to that MSRP, of course. And yeah, that is the information I had. On the one hand, I had eventually multiple sources telling me that $799 was going to be the price they announced. On the other hand, I had AIB saying, yeah, we're reducing the pricing on some of our models a little bit, but overall, we're going to be free to do whatever we want with 4070 Ti pricing, and Nvidia's practice of announcing a starting price that is notably lower than the average price you can actually get a product for, it's coming back with the 4070 Ti. And let me show you some testimonials from some sources I talked to this week when I went back to work. So one source who works at Micro Center told me that they have slightly more 4070 Ti supply on launch day than they had with the 4080, which is really not a lot of product. The 4080 launched with really, really low volume, but it didn't sell out for weeks because nobody wanted it. And because of this, because the 4070 Ti's price to performance isn't that much better in real street pricing compared to the 4080, the people I talked to at Micro Center don't really expect this thing to sell out any faster than the 4080. And another source told me at one location that about 20 to 35% of the 4070 Ti volume at their location is below $850. That doesn't even mean they're all at $800, just below $850. And that this is only on launch day. Upcoming shipments seem to be well over MSRP. Another source told me that they haven't even seen a 4070 Ti below $830. Even some of the cheaper models are $830, and that they know that there will be MSRP models, but they seem like unicorns. And, well, this fourth source here probably has the most damning information to pay attention to. Globally, this person backs up that the 4070 Ti will have a comparable amount of launch supply to what the 4080 had, but a little bit more than the 4080, but a comparable tier of, amount of supply. And this is what the first source said to me as well at a Micro Center. It's also important, though, for people to know that Nvidia this time around, unlike the 4080, is not requiring AIBs to keep a certain percent of the volume at MSRP. They had pricing restrictions in place for the 4080 at launch day so the MSRP didn't feel fake. They have not done this with the 4070 Ti. AIBs are free to gouge freely. In fact, a couple AIBs I talked to said that the only reason they will have some models at MSRP is to save face at launch in case it doesn't sell well. But if it does sell well, they don't need to do anything. They can just ship all of the overclock models that add a bunch of money on top of the MSRP's price. And now I would actually like to try to convey what the average pricing of the 4070 Ti will actually look like on online retailers. Now, bear with me here. Let me explain. I, of course, don't have, or I can't share, even if I did have, to be honest, from a source, direct sales volume per AIB SKU from Newegg. I can't show you that even if I did have it, because it could give a source away, and, well, that's really well guarded by Newegg. But what I can do is look at the amount of reviews per SKU on Newegg, not as some final say on what the percentage breakup is, but just to kind of demonstrate, generally speaking, what probably the breakup is between these different models. So if I look at Asus RTX 4080 graphics card SKUs on Newegg, you can see that, well, there's one review for the $1,200 model, and there are far more reviews for the other models, and that indeed Asus, more than I think almost any other AIB, loves overcharging for the top Strix Overclock edition. Now, this is normal. They do this if they can. They make multiple versions of each SKU. They have a Strix, they'll have a Tough. The Tough is the cheapest, but they'll even have a Tough Overclock, so that based on how well things are selling, the AIB can basically decide to add like 30 megahertz to the clock speed and say that's why the graphics card costs like an extra $200 if it seems like actually on the street people are willing to pay more for this graphics card than the starting price. That's why these AIBs do this, and Asus is probably the worst offender of it, in all honesty. I mean, if you look at their pricing, they have the top Strix Overclock model priced about 29.3% above MSRP, and if they charge $1,049.99 for the Strix Overclock 4070 Ti, that's a 31.4% markup over MSRP, which isn't a lot more, but it is a couple percent more of a markup between the top 4070 Ti to the bottom 4070 Ti they're selling, compared to what they're doing with the 4080. But like I said, Asus is just one example of an AIB, and they're kind of the worst offender. So for a chart I made, I actually went to the pricing MSI used for the RTX 4080 corresponding with leaked MSI 4070 Ti pricing, which, yeah, just to be clear about another thing, right before a launch, Nvidia makes it clear to AIBs what they're going to have to pay for like the BOM kits to assemble their cards, and the AIBs do their funny math, and the AIBs tell retailers like Newegg, Amazon, Micro Center, so on and so forth, what they're allowed to sell each model for, and that's been provided to retailers by now. And I have to say that Uncanny Gambit on Twitter seems to directly have these charts that a lot of AIBs are sharing around right now. And so I thought I'd give him some credit and make it clear that he backs up the pricing I'm going to use in this chart here. But anyways, let's get to it. So it's not perfect. Not every AIB model for the 4070 Ti and the 4080 lines up, but most of them do. There's a Supreme X for both. There's a Gaming X for both. There's a Ventus and Ventus Overclock for both. If I correspond the leaked pricing for the 4070 Ti MSI models and then the 4080 MSI models, you can see that on average, it's not huge, but there is a larger markup on the 4070 Ti on average compared to the 4080. And actually, if you average the price based on, and I used like assuming it's the same, number of reviews breakup as a proxy for volume between the 4080 and 4070 Ti. Again, I'm just trying to make an example here. If you break that up, the average price actually of the 4070 Ti from MSI is $896. And again, this is assuming the breakup of the 4070 Ti MSI models will be similar to the 4080. But the 4080 actually had requirements, stipulations in place by Nvidia requiring MSI to have a certain amount of cards at MSRP. They don't have that for the 4070 Ti. So even if it was the same as the 4080, and they have no reason to make it that, it will still be a higher markup on average compared to the 4080. And the average price of the 4070 Ti is almost certainly going to be $900 or higher. But all right, let's say you sleep in on January 5th when the 4070 Ti comes out, but you kind of wanted one. You were just barely willing to pay $800, but you missed the initial launch and all those MSRP models are already gone. You're looking around, you see various models between $850 to $950. Is that worth it? Is it worth paying $900 for the 4070 Ti? What's its performance going to be like? Well, this video is dropping right before the reviews come out, so I'm not going to get into exact percentages. I will let the reviewers who have these cards tell you exactly what they think about the performance. That's their job. I'll let them do it. I don't want to steal their thunder too much, but I will say I've been talking to people who have 4070 Ti's, and at least in 4K, from what I'm hearing from multiple people, this is not better than a 3090 Ti. In 1080p, in some averages, it seems to be, but at least in 4K, it seems to slightly beat the 3090. Basically, the 4070 Ti is a 3090 12 gigabyte for $900, which is about, actually, it's a bit more than what you've been able to get a used 3090 for months. Now, obviously, used prices are always in flux, especially during a holiday season, but there's just no way around it. Even comparing to used 3090s that have double the VRAM, this feels like complete pricing to performance stagnation. And in fact, it's even kind of a backstep if you compare it to the not worse priced products from the previous gen. If you compare the 4070 Ti to the 3080, remember, the 3090 was only like 10% better than a 3080. You're looking at something that costs, depending on if it's at MSRP or most likely well above MSRP, something that's, I don't know, 20 to 30% more expensive than a 3080, while only outperforming it by about 10%. Yeah, I guess it's more efficient and it comes with some new features, but I don't know. There's no way around it. I don't think that makes up for it. This just looks like some startling price to performance stagnation compared to last gen. I don't really see this as effectively much better than the 4080, which I thought was just a complete slap in the face to consumers. And I mean, honestly, guys, even comparing it to Ampere, at least like the RTX 3070, even when it was selling for $800 from scalpers, the 3070 was still about the same performance as a 2080 Ti that was previously selling for $1,200. This is just worse than last gen, and it's a bunch of bullshit, guys. I don't know what to tell you. But, you know, speaking of stagnant bullshit, we got to talk about what's going on with Lovelace laptops too, because as far as I can tell, the situation there may be even worse when it comes to pricing. But first, an ad from a sponsor. Jessie here may know how to fetch very well, but she really hasn't learned one of the main things any viewer of Moore's Law is Dead should know by now, and that's that you don't need to overpay for Microsoft keys. This piece of content is brought to you by cdkeyoffer.com. There's just no reason to pay exorbitant monopolistic prices for Microsoft Office or Microsoft operating systems anymore. Not when you have someone like cdkeyoffer.com, who's been a fantastic sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead for many years now. If you're looking for anything from Steam games, Origin games, Uplay games, or PlayStation keys, or reasonably priced Microsoft software, go to cdkeyoffer.com today, click the links in the description, and use the offer codes BrokenSilicon for 25% off Microsoft keys and DieShrink for 3% off everything else on the website. Don't be like Jesse here, who's chewing on my chair right now. Be smart, don't overpay for online software, and go to cdkeyoffer.com today. Now, like I alluded to before the break, desktop Lovelace, including the 4070 Ti, it just seems to be, besides the 4090, a horrific stagnation of price performance compared to the previous generation. But I have to say, if you missed it today, that Ada laptops look even worse. Although before I get into this mother of all insults to consumers, I want to be very clear that Lovelace itself as an architecture looks very impressive in terms of total efficiency that's possible in laptops, which means also in terms of the level of performance they are now able to bring to form factors they couldn't before. Lovelace itself is impressive. Don't kid yourselves. And, you know, if you are someone who is waiting to buy a high-end laptop, I think it will have been worth the wait if you have a ton of money. Just like someone who was waiting for the 4090 and skipped the RTX 3090 Ti, that was a very good decision. I totally expect the RTX 4090 Laptop Edition products to bring something close to 3090 Ti performance into reasonable laptop form factors, which is incredible, an incredible achievement technologically, but my God, is it going to cost you? You see, today Nvidia announced that their Lovelace laptops were starting at about $1,000. Now, keep in mind what that means. On this slide here, they show the 4050 and starting. That means $1,000 gets you an RTX 4050, not 4070 laptop, at least when it first comes out. And just to compare that to last generation, let me remind you that starting at $1,000 with Ampere got you the full 106 die in the mobile 3060. Now, that's going to get you a cut down 107 die. I'm really not kidding here. The 4050 is cut down 107. The 4060 also uses the 107 die, and the 4070 isn't even using a cut down 104, but the 4070 is using a 106, traditionally used for the 60 class die. And even the laptop version, which wasn't the same specs as the desktop, even the laptop version of the 3070 with Ampere did use the same die as the desktop 3070 and did have the full 256-bit bus enabled. But now, compared to the laptop 3070, the laptop 4070 will be bringing you 10% less cores than the previous gen and half the bus width. Instead of simply raising prices by 30%, but also bringing you a 40 to 60% performance increase at the same TDPs, Nvidia has gotten really, really extra greedy, even more so in laptop compared to their desktop Lovelace products. They are taking 50 Ti class dies and overclocking them super hard, probably throwing out half of the efficiency they could have so that they can sell them as 70 class products, which, let me be clear about that. Turing used 12 nanometer, RDNA 1 used 7 nanometer, but Turing used way larger die size per tier, and so they were able to compete with AMD's efficiency a few years ago. So, yeah, I think there will be some circumstances where Lovelace laptops are incredibly more efficient than Ampere laptops, but depending on how hard they have to push some of these 4070 models compared to the old 3070 models that had die sizes that were like twice as big, they're not going to bring you the efficiency increase per tier, per price that they could have. Not even close. Just like on desktop, except it's worse now, on laptop, Nvidia, if you want the next gen efficiency, you're going to have to pay $2,000 for a laptop that will have a glorified 4070 Ti renamed as a 4080 laptop, and the 4090 laptops will probably be like $3,000, over double the price of a desktop 4080, while bringing you, at best, the performance of a desktop 4080. And looking at this gouging, I gotta say that from my talks with OEMs, they, like at HP, Lenovo, Dell, they say that their laptop sales are doing excellent parallel to the downturn in do-it-yourself desktop. Yes, do-it-yourself desktop is going through a slump right now, but OEM laptop is doing fine. And so I suspect that a very large reason that Nvidia is deciding to be so out to lunch with their pricing of 80-104 and 80-103 desktop products is because if they don't sell well on desktop, whatever, they're just going to shift as much volume as they can, or as much wafer supply as they can, to making 4090s people are happy to pay way over MSRP for, and then they're going to take all those 104 and 103 dies they do make and just send them to laptop, where as far as we can tell, they're able to charge even more than they're trying to charge on desktop. And you know what? Unfortunately, they might actually sell fine on laptop. But do notice that I just used the word might. Nvidia might get away with selling laptop Lovelace products at these absurd prices fine, only if AMD doesn't get their shit together. Because clearly, though, Nvidia doesn't think they will. When you look at these absurd prices for Lovelace products, when you look at the 4070 Ti basically being sold for the same price as the unlaunched 4080 12GB, Nvidia unlaunched the 4080 12GB because they thought they had to, and they're looking back on it and going, maybe we didn't have to. Nvidia clearly thinks AMD isn't going to fix RDNA 3, and they have nothing to worry about. And all I can say to AMD then is, well, number one, fix the reference 7900 XTX coolers. Over break, I talked to a few system integrators, and well, I wouldn't take these numbers I'm going to say as in stone. At least from the people I talked to, it seems like 10 to 30% of 7900 XTX coolers are faulty and overheating and causing massive throttling and thermal issues. AMD needs to acknowledge, whether they do a recall or not, that at a minimum, they're aware that there is a bad batch of coolers, and from what I'm hearing, it is certainly not all of them, but that AMD needs to acknowledge there was a bad batch of coolers. Send them in. We'll send you a new card right away, and we've already fixed the issue. This needs to come out, or this story will get away from AMD worse than the melting 16-pin story got away from Nvidia. Silence is deafening in this regard. And then after that, AMD needs to price their products to take market share. And I actually do mean the word needs. I can't go into details here, but what I will say is I've recently had more confirmation provided to me from the people near the top of AMD that they really were, a few months ago, expecting RDNA 3 to be a killer, to go head-to-head with NVIDIA's best products this generation, and that RDNA 3, AMD was planning to take market share with it. I can't say more about who said this to me or where it came from. Take this kind of similar to me talking about ARC effectively being canceled, which, let's see, if we check right now, oh yeah, Raja Koduri is being demoted and AXG will cease to exist. If that's not close enough to effectively canceled, I don't know what is, people. Just like that, I certainly can't tell you who I talked to. But what I can say is AMD did plan to take market share with RDNA 3, and they did think they'd be able to go head-to-head. And that's good news, though, because even if they've fallen short for now, even if they never were able to fix RDNA 3 with drivers, which I think they might be able to, but even if they're not, that means that they bought up a ton of capacity. You buy capacity from TSMC ahead of time. So whether or not AMD has the product they wish they had, they bought a lot of it. And the one ray of light that I'm seeing here is AMD's hopefully being humbled by all of their recent problems. They're seeing that NVIDIA once again is leaving a massive opening for them, and they take it. I really hope they do, at least, because from what I know, they kind of have to. And so hopefully that will bring some, level of equilibrium and correction to the market that is getting out of hand more and more so, where products only get more expensive and never get better, even when there aren't shortages. But at the end of the day, all I can say is that AMD probably has to go for market share, and all of these products will go down in price because both AMD and Nvidia bought up a ton of capacity. They will go down in price if you guys don't buy this bullshit. All right, and that's going to do it for this video. I'm back. I'm going to be putting out many videos this week during CES. I've got a very exciting upcoming guest that patrons can ask questions of if they support Moore's Law is Dead. So, if you have the extra money, consider supporting Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. You'll be able to ask guest questions, ask me and Dan questions on the news episodes. You, of course, also get podcasts early and ad-free and premium podcasts that no one else gets unless you're a patron, which some of those came out over the holiday break. You don't want to miss them. If you have the extra money, but even if you don't, support our sponsors, and as always, thank you for watching.